now I mean it.
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 43, and I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin. Let's debunk some more junk.
Yeah, what kind of BS you got today?
Well, plenty. Depending on who you ask, some might say more than others.
Well,
some might say more than others.
More than others?
I don't know.
I don't know. Who knows?
I know what I meant to say. That just didn't come quite.
I messed you up. I interrupted your. We are here to debunk the junk.
No. I just decided to try and get cutesy, and it didn't work.
Oh, okay.
So,
well.
Oh well.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so I didn't nail it out of the gate. But
yeah, that's okay.
Nevertheless, well, good to see you, Tawny.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. If you are listening live, thank you so much for doing so. If you are listening as a podcast, thank you so much for subscribing and for leaving comments for us. Really appreciate that. If you're watching on our YouTube channel at Breaking Up with Our BS, how do we look?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. We'd have to.
We're not color coordinated today.
No,
but...
that doesn't always happen. But and of course, you can also join our Facebook page at Breaking Up with Our BS to get content in between episodes, interact with us more directly. And Tawny is offering her 6-week self-mastery course, which how's that going for people?
It is going really well. Yeah. And for the month of June, in addition to it, for anybody who registers in the month of June, they get an extra free complimentary, well, that means the same thing, coaching session with me.
Oh, wow.
If they register in the month of June.
Okay.
So you can go to unperfectyourself.com.
Ooh.
Register there, and we're going to unperfect you.
And I cannot recommend that highly enough. The longtime listeners of this show know that where all this started was me working with Tawny in a coaching capacity, and it's helpful. It could be good, so that's great.
Yeah, super
all right,
fun.
So unperfectyourself.com.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it's June, so you got a month to act.
Yes.
Everybody? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so there's always so many places we could go.
Mm-hmm.
Anything for talking about today, anything coming to mind for you that sounds like could be a fun thing to talk about, or anything your clients have been bringing up on a regular basis?
Yeah, such a great question. Great question. And I feel like you ask me that question every week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if what happens when I turn it back to you.
Oh, you had this look in your eye.
I know. I just thought I want to do something a little different today.
You know what? I saw it.
I just went for it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
You have to tell when I can tell that you're about to turn the tables.
I like to think I have a nice like poker face, and I think lots of times I do. I do. And then sometimes I just like to get the heart rate up a little bit.
Well, I think what happens is in when you really connect with somebody in a conversation, you can kind of tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, she's going to do something a little different.
Yeah.
Well, if you're asking me.
I am.
Boy, there's a lot of things that came up this week in various areas. One thing that I know we've talked a little bit about before is this idea of settling for things in life. A handful of episodes ago, we talked about expectations,
mm-hmm.
And so this maybe is related in some ways to that.
Okay.
But I've seen and heard in conversations, not just this past week, but for a while now, of people having this fear of settling, or, particularly when something happens that they weren't expecting, the end of a relationship or a job challenge or a family challenge, this fear of settling for something that's less than ideal, or maybe also a fear of not getting what they think, what they're really shooting for in life, so they have to settle for less.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that a lot.
And so, what does settle mean?
To me?
Sure.
I know less and less. I don't think about things in terms of settling too much anymore. But the way it comes across to me when I observe these things in people is that settling means you stop trying for the things you really want.
Okay, stop trying.
Stop working for it, or stop doing things to get there.
Okay. So it's sort of like this, just you don't have a plan or goal or something?
Or giving up on something that you're wanting to take something a little less than that?
And because like how do we know when it's time to settle?
That's always been my question. I don't know.
If we're defining settle like that, like I don't know. Meaning if that's the definition of settling.
Right.
Like at what point are we deciding now's the time?
Yeah, right. Right. And I guess that's the question that if I'm in a situation where I'm being asked my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
I probably would ask a similar question. It's like, well, how do you know you're settling?
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that there's a perceived ideal there rather than a concrete possibility of something or I don't know. I'm speaking real generalities, but the where I've heard it is in relationships with people saying, I feel like I'm with this person. They might not be the person for me because A, B, and C.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be settling if I continued with this. Or job wise is the other place I hear that. I feel like I'm settling for something in my work that isn't really what I want. Sometimes I hear that from the same person.
You know what? It's so funny. I'm trying not to chuckle here a little bit because it's so true. Like we have these ideas about how life is supposed to be, what job I'm supposed to be doing, what kind of person I'm supposed to be with, or, you know, my ideal. You mentioned ideal earlier, right? So if I don't get my ideal, then I'm settling for less.
Yes.
And underneath all of this, there's a lot of importance of like what can we control and what can we not control. Like we've got to be able to see what pieces of this are we able to control and what we can't control. That's number one, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're like, okay, I'm looking for the perfect mate. Okay, and so then I meet somebody who maybe doesn't reach that perfect ideal, but is maybe a good enough mate here. Do I just keep looking for perfection so that I don't settle? And what does that even then look like and mean? So I think there's some perfectionistic types of ideas here that that kind of get coupled with settling. Like if you didn't have the perfectionist ideas, would settling even be a thing?
I don't think so.
Because there's acceptance that's hanging out over here too. Like, hi, like look, waiting to be seen also. And we can talk about acceptance versus settling a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
But I think perfectionism or having this perfect or ideal drives this whole settling thing.
It seems to be, it seems like it, and at least in cases that I'm thinking about in this moment, that some of those ideals aren't even based in reality. They're pedestalizing, maybe a ideal type of person that really doesn't exist, or a ideal job dynamic or scenario that doesn't really exist. To me, the danger has always seemed, and I've been guilty of this in the past, you're setting up a standard that is not based on experience or anything like what is actually out there in a job or a person or a situation. And the danger, it seems to me, is you're setting yourself up to never find those things or that you think you'll be happy with, because they'll never meet that standard.
Right. So almost like setting ourselves up to settle.
Ooh, yeah.
Right.
Or at least to have the angst about whether you're supposed to settle or not.
Absolutely.
Oh man.
And then also like the setting ourselves up to just exhaust ourselves after a while. Because if we keep looking for something that is perfect, even shiny wears off. Right? So sometimes we think, oh, this is perfect, only to realize 6 months later, this is not perfect.
It's not perfect.
So then I got to go out again and look for perfect.
Yeah.
So this perfection thing is a troublesome beast.
It is, because I can understand on a certain degree, like with a job or with, either finding a partner or maintaining a relationship with a partner, that, standards, things you're looking for, expectations, agreements, as we've talked about on this show before, matter, right? So it doesn't just mean necessarily that anything will work. You just, just take what shows up and be fine with it. And yet, you're exactly right. It seems like we're setting ourselves up to have to settle or confront that idea, which is a recipe for dis-ease, it seems like, and lack of satisfaction, a lot of stress. And I've seen that in the situations that I'm talking about. I've observed them of late in several different places.
And I think what rolls around with that too sometimes is apathy.
Ooh,
Right? We get to a place of like, ugh,
I give up already.
I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to settle and I'm not going to care about a thing anymore. Right? Like we've all been there for a moment or two.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But sometimes we can stay there way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And that's rough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and, I wonder, we get a lot of messaging around all that, right? Around, always shooting for what you want and not settling. You hear that a lot, but the language and what that actually means is so vague, because it's usually coming in these little bite-sized snippets, right? Something from a TV show we like, or a meme that we saw, or a short conversation with friends and they tend to be those conversations where you know exactly what that friend's about to say, because that's what they fall back on sometimes, those moments. And it just doesn't seem all that helpful, and yet we're bombarded by that. Another one of those cases, it seems to me, like you and I talk about on the show a lot, where something that we think we understand what it means, when we really stop and examine it for a minute, realize it doesn't explain a whole lot. So with that, so settling and acceptance you put together, it seems to me, if all that's the BS story, how do we break up with that?
Right. So certainly if settling is the bad guy and acceptance is the good guy, right? We've kind of,
right.
Whether we sort of are connected to those two words or not. I mean, they sort of, settling is the bad guy and acceptance is
settling
the good guy.
Is the red lightsaber.
Mm-hmm. Star Wars again.
Star Wars.
It's okay.
Sorry.
or the peas and carrots.
There we go. Okay. All right. Something a little more. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Anyways.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
You were saying?
We got sidetracked. There's an energy about settling that wherever it came from, it's a bad thing. Don't settle. We hear this all the time, like you said.
That's the bad guy.
Yeah. And we do know that there's something about acceptance. Acceptance doesn't have as bad of a rap until and if we associate settling with acceptance. Right? So that sometimes happens.
Yes.
When I talk to my clients and I hear, we're talking about acceptance, but I don't want to settle. I'm like, okay. But we're talking about two different things. We weren't talking about settling.
Right.
Because there's something empowering about acceptance. Acceptance is an ability to really see what's real. Right. And have some clarity. And settling can be based completely off of all the BS stories that we hold.
Yeah.
Attached to those maybe unreasonable or unrealistic expectations, right? Acceptance isn't about unrealistic expectations.
That's true.
And more around being able to see clearly.
Yeah.
And then acting from there, whatever that means.
And it would seem to me, you can do that no matter how it feels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which means you don't have to like it.
Oh, no.
To accept it.
Absolutely.
That trips people up too, I think, sometimes.
And even though we don't like it, it can still be empowering. I mean, that because anytime we're in reality, clearly, whether we like it or not, it's because there's a lot of reality that we don't like. Right. So we're in reality, even though we don't necessarily like it, we can still accept it. Right. We can still see it clearly. Right. The settling part is a strange way of sort of getting out of reality.
That's true.
Right. Like I don't want to look at reality. So here I am settling. And it's maybe my fault, maybe someone else's fault. Who knows?
The
right?
universe's fault.
Right. And here I am just having to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's disempowering, and it's not about reality at all. So reality does include discomfort.
Comes back time and time again, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. And what comes up for me with that is that by itself can be the discomfort can indicate, I think, sometimes to people that they're settling, or that they should, or that they might be, or that they could, or that that's the choice they're facing. When really it's just discomfort with maybe not knowing what to do. Because in the end, if it's about a relationship or a job or whatever it might be, it's really about what are you choosing to do with this, right? If you're in a relationship you're not sure about, you have to choose whether you're going to stay in it or not.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or if you're going to give it more time, or you're going to choose to be more invested and see more or less in a job. Are you going to choose to see if you can move up in the company, or choose to change your job, or choose to, rather than, and it just seems like it doesn't require a huge whole-scale reframing to be away from the settling idea and actually be in a more empowered position.
Yeah, I think if we're going to associate discomfort with settling and not with acceptance, then this whole thing's going to be a whole lot more confusing.
No kidding.
Right? Because discomfort is a part of settling, and it's a part of acceptance. Right? So it's like friends with both, kind of just, hangs out with both. But acceptance with discomfort is going to be a whole lot more clear and in reality and present than the discomfort with settling. So it's not about trying to make discomfort more comfortable.
Yeah.
This isn't what we're talking about.
Right.
It's that both of these are uncomfortable, yes. But one is empowering and one is inherently disempowering. And we have choice.
Yeah.
Which one do we want to hang out with?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. They don't exist independently of our own choices, it seems to me.
No, we have choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, the question popped into my mind as you were talking about that. So is maybe on some level this desire to not settle on some level an attempt to avoid discomfort? Because if we're not settling, we have certainty. That's the message. That's the story. If I'm not settling, I'm certain that this is where I want to be. This is what it's going to give me. I'm going to be happy, fulfilled, lacking discomfort. Is that a motive possibly for this idea of not wanting to settle, avoiding discomfort?
It probably could be. I think the messaging of, I think that is more around perfectionist conditioning ideas that we've, all grown up with.
Okay.
Right. So a good person doesn't settle, or a successful person doesn't settle, or whatever, keep after it. Don't quit. Right. And I don't know if that's necessarily about discomfort as much as it is about that idea that we are all supposed to strive towards some kind of successful accomplishment. And we all, many of us want it to be a big one.
Right. It's got to be a home run.
Right. It's got to be the big, huge thing that we've got to get to. Right. And if we quit this, then we're settling, whether it is the perfect relationship or the perfect job or role or career, or whether it's, something else.
Right. And our lives will be less than they could be if we stop pursuing that. Right.
So all the while, we might be striving for any and all of that and not even really realize whether or not we actually want it or whether or not we're actually seeing clearly.
Yeah.
Because you think about work. So we get this great role that we love and it's perfect and we are so excited we have arrived. All it takes for that to change is a new boss. And we don't have control over that at all.
That's right.
All of a sudden, 6 months into this perfect scenario, we get a new boss. It's no longer perfect. We don't have control over any of it. So settling, if we have this mindset around settling, right, we might make particular choices, right?
Right.
And we might think about ourselves in particular ways. And if we can see clearly, like, yeah, this is what work is.
Yeah. I'm accepting that I don't have control over this. This happens.
Yeah.
And this might mean it might be best for me to make a shift or learn to live with the new reality.
Yeah. Or the reality is, if I go to another place too, I'm in the same boat, right? This can happen at any place I go to. So, being clear, when we have an ability to really see the landscape clearly, we typically then can make a better choice for ourselves, whatever that means for us. But if we're just going to go off and look for the next perfect place, well, we may find it for a hot second and then that changes, or we may not. So just that drive to perfect is going to create some problems for us.
Yeah. Because then, like, say, follow out that scenario. I've seen this happen where something like that shifts, the ideal quote unquote situation changes. Somebody goes, look, I'm going to look for a new job. They look, but because they're coming from that perspective, they can't find the perfect situation. So they stay in the job, or they feel they have to because they're ding, 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 settling.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the job is the same job they were hired for. It's paying them what it's paying them. The start and end times are the same. Coworkers may shift slightly, but the framework around it has been completely changed by their own decision to call it settling or think they have to find the perfect situation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just the parameters of settling or perfection, right? So if we went into a job and we enjoyed the job, and wow, there's some really great things about this job. This is going to be so fun to do this particular thing and that particular thing. I'm really excited about this and the other. But it's a job, and this can change at any moment.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to enjoy it in the way that it is right now.
In the now.
And then when things change, because they will, then I'm going to find other things to enjoy about this, as long as I want to do this job.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
And not have any further expectations than that around it being perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could help.
It could. And that's a subtle yet significant shift. Yeah. Hard to see too, those options when the fear of, am I settling, or I need to, or the dis-ease that can come if you're telling yourself you're settling. It's gotta be really hard to see that.
Oh, that's a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
When that mindset or those BS stories support. So like settling, like that was my, if we circle back around to, starting to talk about settling. And when I said, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what does it even really, it doesn't have to be even a word we use.
Yeah. It's kind of a BS story just by itself. This notion of settling, because the choice is there, And of course, it raises also another question we don't have as much time to go into, that maybe the problem is that we're seeing everything is the next thing, whether it's the next relationship or that ideal one, or the ideal job, is to be the thing that is going to set us, that will become bedrock, that will stay, that will give us what we need, that'll be the big benchmark that we've arrived, that there's meaning or whatever. When really what you're suggesting is, by staying present, staying in the moment, whether it is or whether it isn't, doesn't really matter, because you're showing up for what's happening right now. Because relationships change, jobs change, temperaments change, needs change in a job, in a relationship, priorities change. So we can accept that on some level and make better choices in the now, or we cannot accept it and cause ourselves a whole lot of discomfort that maybe we're not ready to sit with, because there's going to be discomfort anyway.
Well, it just matter how much do you want to struggle, right? Like if you want to continue to try to control things that you can't control, that equals you will struggle more than you need to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the facts.
But that's the choice, as opposed to it just happening because life isn't fair.
Oh, sure.
Or the universe is out to get me, or my past is hindering me, or whatever story
totally.
we want to come up with.
Absolutely. Right. So that's the part of being, sort of like weighted by the stories that is going to create more struggle, no matter what we're doing with those.
Man, and we think they're real, and they're not.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't settle. So whatever that means to us, we keep charging right ahead, or we become apathetic. And if we took settle out of our vocabulary, like when you hear and see all the memes and all the don't settle, keep going, think about that for a minute. Just take a pause, right? And come back to what you value. If listeners come back to what is important to you, that you feel in your body.
Yeah.
Right? Come back to that for a hot second. That settling is from a thinking space.
Yeah.
Right? Check in with your body and see what that feels like, because the reality is you might have changed your mind.
That's right.
Your body might have said, "Hey, hello. We want to do something different."
Yeah. So it sounds like we should take settling and just put it in that little green doggy bag.
The green doggy bag.
The green doggy bag thing, and just toss it off to the side.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't serve us.
Yeah.
Be interesting. Take that out of the equation, all of you who are listening, and see what shifts. If you're not giving yourself that vocabulary, see what options come out there for you. So, okay. Wow. All right.
There you
How'd I do with the curveball?
Yeah, I thought you did great.
Oh, thank you.
This was so good. It went by lickety-split.
It did, as always. So thank you again for tuning in for this episode of Breaking Up with RBS. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week to talk about something else.
Who knows?
Until then, I'm JDK Winnikin.
And I'm Tawny Santabria.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
Usa que ya